Hello, everyone. My name is Chief Kevin Fowler of the Melrose Police Department, and this is our first installment of a new podcast that we're hoping to unveil to the community, and we're calling it Behind the Badge, Melrose Edition. With me today is Officer Dale Parsons and Officer Andrew Ruby, both of whom are leading our new social media team / community engagement unit team, and I give them a lot of credit for coming to me and with fresh ideas, this being one of them, and we're glad to partner with MMTV to pilot episode that we hope to have at least maybe twice a month, but we'll see how the first one goes.
Yeah, episode number 1, exciting.
Yes. So episode number 1, we're going to talk about several things, actually. We're going to talk about the hiring process. How do you become a police officer? I want to get some input from Andrew and Dale at one point about why they became police officers, a little bit about themselves so we can learn more about the police officers that wear the badge in the city. We're also going to talk about how to apply for the civil service exam, what our goals are for this year, and a new police station is coming soon, hopefully in the next 3 years, what that means to the men and women that work on our job, and just what our sort of goals are to involve the community more in what we do on a daily basis. So first I'd like to start with Dale. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do on the police department, why you became a police officer,
Sure,
and so forth.
All right. So as Chief said, I'm Dale Parsons. I grew up here in Melrose, and I was hired in 2016. And being a police officer was always a goal of mine. I either wanted to be a police officer or a firefighter, and I turned 18 and started taking the civil service tests, and it took about 8 years of doing that to finally get a letter from Melrose. But while I was taking those tests, I was still in college and began pursuing a career in the educational field. I have my master's in special education, and that always was a consolation prize to me. That was my second choice. And so I continued to take the civil service exams, and I didn't even get a letter until I became a veteran. And so once I became a veteran, I got a letter from Melrose and jumped at that opportunity to take that career change. And
Excellent.
And so now I've been here since 2016. Since you came on, we've been able to do a lot more new things. We've been modernizing a little bit, and so I with Andrew, lead the social media team. We do a lot of community policing outreach, and so that's become one of my roles here in the department.
Good, and I'm glad you mentioned being a veteran, and obviously thank you for your service, but we'll talk about that in a little bit, that there are some sort of advantages when applying for a police job if you are a veteran, and we can get into that.
Absolutely.
But thank you. Andrew, how about yourself?
Yeah, as Chief said, Andrew Ruby. I was born and raised here in the city of Melrose as well. Kind of generic, but always wanted to be a police officer, watching the cop TV show. And I could just never really picture myself sitting behind a desk or in a cubicle or some sort of office job. It just wasn't appealing to me. But there was one night in particular that sort of, wrapped up the goal of becoming a police officer for me. It was my sophomore year in high school when my house got broken into. A whole lot of things got stolen. And then 2 days later, the police were back at my house with canines and, other departments assisting and looking for this individual that was rifling through cars in the neighborhood behind me. And when I saw that come into my backyard, I was like, that's it. It's a done deal.
Yeah, right.
I didn't take the exam for 8 years. I only took it twice. I'm not a veteran, so I got kind of lucky. But yeah, I've been on since 2020. Like Dale said, I'm a part of the social media team. I work the evening shifts as well as a bunch of other shifts. And yeah, we're just trying to get more involved with the community, and this is one of the ways that we're trying.
Good. It's an excellent example. And both of you guys went to college, right?
Yes.
And we'll get into that in the hiring process. It's obviously, it's not a requirement, but it's certainly, I think, personally for me, it helps. It shows that someone, obviously can handle the academic workload for a police academy that's pretty strenuous.
Yep.
And I know, Andrew, I know you played high school hockey and some college club hockey.
Yep.
And I know, Dale, you played sports as well. And can you guys talk about a little bit about how that helped you prepare yourself for this type of profession, being on team sports?
Yeah. We definitely have a team atmosphere at Melrose. I think that's one of the strongest things that we have, or a great pitch, especially for laterals coming in from larger departments that don't have that camaraderie. I grew up playing football. I played football at Melrose High, and then I played football at Framingham State, and knowing how to operate and handle the social aspects of being on a team definitely helped coming here.
Yes.
It's certainly, I feel like calling it a locker room atmosphere gives it a bad connotation, but it's a good thing.
I think I know exactly what you mean. And it does have sort of a bad connotation, but I'll spin it in the positive way, right? So you've been on teams, and I'm sure you're in your hockey team, that you don't get along with everybody, right? I mean, in an ideal world you do, but when that puck is dropped, or when the football is kicked off. I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But when the game is on, is what I'm saying.
Everything goes out the window.
You're all teammates. You have each
Absolutely.
other's back. If it gets dirty in the corners, you're going to go in there no matter what your relationship is with that person off the ice. And it's a great example. That's why I brought it up, because this is a job for me like I've had no other. I mean, I came out of college, played sports as well, but I come to work every day. I think it's fun because you joke around, but when the game's on, the game's on, and we go out and do what we have to do. So thank you for that input. I think it's important for people to know. So I want to transition into that, and thank you for the background information. I want to transition into how do you become a police officer, right? How do you even apply? What do you do? What's required? Can one of you take that, Dale?
Sure. So it's not as hard as it used to be for me when I took it 8 times. I scored very high.
9 times is the charm, or is it okay?
I consistently scored very high. It just, at the time when I was trying to get hired, there were a lot of veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, and this was a preferred job. And so now the sign up is the same. We are a civil service department, and so to take the civil service exam, you go on the civil service website, register, and sign up right there, and then you would go and take the test. I believe I took all of my tests at the Wakefield Voc.
Sure.
And it's maybe 2-3 hours, I think, for the
Just
test.
a written exam, correct?
Just
right?
the written exam, yes. Yeah, I won't talk about the fire exam, but they do have a physical part before you get hired. So you take the written exam, and once you get the scores back, a list is published and letters go out, depending on the departments that are hiring and the department needs.
And it's ranked by, obviously, how well you do on the exam, with a few exceptions.
Right,
correct?
Yes, there are a few exceptions. Disabled veterans are listed. Actually, no, the people who have lost a family member in the line of duty are ranked first, rightfully so.
401
Bs.
401 Bs,
405 or something.
Yeah. And then it would go disabled veterans, and then there's a residency preference.
Right, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, and if you want to talk a little bit about that. So we're in the process of hiring. Obviously, we're Melrose Police. We prefer to have Melrose residents because for several reasons. I just think they have a larger stake in the community. But it's not only by choice, right? So there's what's called a residential preference. If you can maybe tell our listeners what that means, what when you take the exam.
Sure. My understanding that you have to live in the city that you are putting down as residency for a year prior to the exam date.
Correct.
And I also believe that, like, if you were to get a letter, this is something that has to be proven. So, pieces of mail from a certain date, they're going to talk to your neighbors too. But yeah, residency is the probably easiest way to get hired if you're on a list. If you don't have residency, say you're a Lynn resident, but you're on the Melrose list, you're going to be way down as opposed to somebody who has that residency. They're going to be, in that group of residents, as Dale talked about, and you're going to have a better shot than, the other people on the list. But yeah, it's definitely important.
Good. So we'll fast forward a little bit. You're on the list. You score well, right? You're a Melrose resident. If the city is hiring police officers, what happens is the city and the civil service will send out notifications, correct? So then you can sort of come to us. Now you have to fill out an application, and after the application is done, then what sort of happens? What happens on the administrative end of it, I guess I would call it.
Well, I don't know if it's changed. I'm more of a recent hire. I don't know if it was different when you got on, but when I got on, I got my civil service letter via email. Basically said you have a certain amount of time to respond to this email if you would like to be considered for the police officer position with Melrose. I immediately said yes. Then I was given an application, which I had to fill out, bring it down to City Hall, and then from there, somebody from our department will reach out for you. For me, it was the patrol commander at the time, Lieutenant DeCroto, who essentially, helps you go from there, sets up an interview, so on and so forth, background.
Yes, very important, obviously, right, Dale? Background investigations. Make sure we were hiring the right people, right? No criminal record,
right?
To some extent, because people make mistakes. Obviously, it's not a fatal thing if someone was in trouble at some point in their life, because it's more important about how you deal with that in growing up and so forth. So, big background investigation, right? Some oral boards. I'm sure that you were probably put in front of a panel of lieutenants and sergeants to try to rattle you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was nerve-wracking.
So if that all goes well, you got to do a medical, pass a
Yes.
medical, pass a psychological exam, which
Yes.
I think we can all agree is important. We're all
Absolutely.
going to be carrying weapons and being entrusted with some pretty important stuff. So we want to make sure we're okay. And then you start a police academy. Tell me about the police academy. How's that
Before
go?
the police academy, you have to do the physical, the PT test.
Correct. I missed that part. So which is running, push-ups, sit-ups, all standards.
Well, there's the initial PT test that they, I believe, still have down in
It's in Hudson. I think it's the PAT.
the PAT,
Right.
And that's just a battery of very low level testing. I'm drawing a blank on the.
It's an obstacle course.
Yeah,
essentially.
that one's not too hard to pass. It's,
No.
it's the second one that you have to do
Right.
all the running and push-ups and stuff like
Right.
that.
So
if
before you start the academy,
if we get through that, if everything's going well, then hopefully you get into a police academy, which a lot of people don't know. And this is one of the reasons why I want to do the behind the badge, to learn a little bit more about the hiring process, in addition to what we do. But it's an academy is 6 months of an intensive legal training, mental health training, physical fitness training, firearms training, of course, driving a vehicle and pursuits. And then when you get out of that after 6 months, then we have another 3 months of field training, right, where you're going to be under the tutelage of a senior officer. And then only then, if you pass all that and you do everything that as expected, then you're out on your own, right? You fly the nest. But the most important thing I like to remind our newer guys is you're on probation for how long?
Correct.
1 year.
A year. And if you mess up, you could be gone, right?
Right.
We don't like to do
There's
that.
No union protection until you get that 1 year mark.
But we have to make sure our men and women are ready. So that's, in a nutshell, the process. One of our reasons for having this podcast today is that there is an exam coming up in March of this year to take this exam that Dale and Andrew just talked about. And can you tell a little bit about the deadline? And again, I think you talked about they would apply on mass.gov on the civil service thing. So the deadline's in January 16th.
January 16th,
Right.
which is coming up.
Okay.
Yes. Just to backtrack a little bit, I don't want to scare anyone thinking that I scored high for 8 years and just wasn't getting hired. Back when I was taking the test, there were so many applicants.
Right.
Now, that number is a third, if that, of what it
Right.
was.
Right.
And so I hope I didn't scare anyone thinking it's an 8-year process to get hired.
It's not.
It's certainly not going to be.
It's not. And that's, like I said, so we're in the process of hiring now. We have 3 recruits that are probably going to start an academy in February or March coming up. But we're also, looking for lateral transfers because as a chief and as an administrator, people don't know out there, lateral transfer is trying to get an officer from another certified civil service police department, an officer that's already working, already trained, already doing the job. The reasons for that is obviously you get to fill vacancies quickly. and we're looking to fill vacancies. We've gone through our Melrose list. We're going to wait for the new exam to hire again off that list. But just to stress to people, it's well over 12 months, well over a 12-month process before you take the exam and you do all that, and we want to hire you. It still takes about a year for you to complete all the academy, field training, background, physical, all that stuff.
Right.
So we're looking for people out there. Sign up for the test. Go to mass.gov. Deadline is next week, actually January 16th.
I think just real quick,
Yeah.
Chief, to circle back to that. I'm a horrible test taker through and through. Middle school, high school, you name it. I was just bad at taking tests. But there are programs out there that can help you prep for this exam. I
True.
know Justin Hanrahan, I took one of his classes.
And now we're doing plugs. Now we're doing plugs for companies.
Sorry.
We need sponsorship money now. All right.
I'm trying to help the people that,
He's now a chief of police. He can give us some.
I'm trying to help the people that are, not the best test takers like I was. But I took one of his classes,
No, you're
and
right,
I
though.
scored
You're right.
better than the first time that I took it. So if you're weary about doing well in an exam, there are things out
It's
there
good
that
advice.
can help you.
Yes. All right. So I want to transition a little bit because we don't have much more time, but we have a lot of stuff to talk about. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about briefly, I wish we had a little bit more time, is the new police station. So as most of you may know, some of you may not know, the ballot question passed over the last election ballot. We're very happy, of course, and it passed overwhelmingly 68%, 32%. And Dale, you were on the Public Safety Building Committee along with myself, and you know how much work it was to put into that. And we
I
want to
do.
thank everybody on the committee and then everybody that was on the campaign committee after that ultimately convinced the community that we needed. But what I really want to thank is the community members, the voters, the people who supported us in the fire department. You guys, relatively new on the job. What does it mean to you? It might be, you could probably talk a long time about it, but
Well,
what does
I
it
could
mean?
talk.
Yeah.
We could do multiple podcasts, and I could talk about
Sure.
the building committee and the building project itself. But
I'm ecstatic. I'm very happy.
yeah, for me, that was 2 years worth of work for me on that building committee. So to have that pass, that was a huge
Absolutely.
huge win.
Yep.
And I've said this before on MMTV and in our meetings and at City Hall, but working in the current building has killed morale to a certain extent because it's dangerous. It's not set up for a modern day police department, and so to get a new building is going to bring a whole new level of professionalism to Melrose Police.
Absolutely.
It'll boost the spirits. I think that's the.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what's good? For the next 3 years, we have something to look forward to. Other than we still come to work and do our job. At least we have a light at the end of the tunnel, I guess you could say.
Right.
And having said that, obviously, we could thank a million people, but I want to thank Mayor Broder and his administration for supporting it. And I had a good meeting today with the new mayor, Grigoritis. She's all on board. And I wanted to emphasize to her, let's not let this get stagnant, right? We got to keep moving. And I feel good about it.
And she was on board from the beginning.
She was. Yeah. So hopefully everything will keep going with that. So we have a few minutes left. Other than that, I just want to talk about a few things that we have planned for 2024. Now that it's the new year, we got the new police station. We're going to get that going hopefully this year, at least for the planning end of it. I just want to mention that we have a RAD Kids training program going on right now. Sergeant McIntosh and Officer Barranco have been instrumental. That's closed right now as far as enrollment, but Sergeant McIntosh has assured me that in March of this year, we're going to run another one. And make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all our social media, our website. Most of them is all melrosepolice.com or Melrose Police, whatever. You search it.
.net.
.net. That's
Very
right.
straightforward.
It's very straightforward. You'll find us, and
Right.
we'll post all that stuff on there. It's very important because that's where we're trying to do a little bit more outreach. Some other things we got going, and I know, Dale, you signed up for a bunch of training, Andrew as well. We got some grants for some mental health training, which is great. I actually just signed a document today that's going to pay for mental health first aid training for the whole department. Crisis intervention team training grant. We'll get people trained in that. That's a 40-hour block to handle mental health and wellness. And then we want to start, I know you guys know about this, a wellness program in the city of, on the police department. And I'm talking about physical and mental wellness, working out, burning off some steam, mental wellness, taking care of your mind, your body, because our job is very stressful. And we'll get into that in a future podcast, what we do behind the scenes that you don't just see in the paper, right? You'll read the log, but there's a lot more than we put in the log. Some of the stuff, quite frankly, we're not allowed to put in the log, right? It's a little bit private with domestics and medicals and mental health stuff. Certainly we'll honor that privacy, but we can talk a little bit about what you guys face on a daily basis. You guys work the street. So we have a lot of good things coming up this year that we're excited about, and this is one of them. Having this podcast, having guests on every week. This is just the pilot episode, right? So it's just police officers, but our goal is to have stakeholders, community members, people that want to talk about just about anything. Hopefully feature other officers on here so we can learn about them. I know our guys get a little shy, a little bit mic shy, camera shy, whatever you want to call it, but hopefully we can get more cooperation. Because
we have a few that wouldn't be so shy.
Oh, good. Do some photo shoots and videos as well. Will that work?
I've heard the calendar being thrown out.
No calendar.
There you go.
No, thank you.
But having said that, I mean, this time kind of went by very fast. And I want to let the listeners know out there, obviously, that we appreciate, first of all, with the new police station that we just talked about, but just in general, the support that we're going to need moving forward and the support in the community that we've had up to date. We have a lot of good things we want to share, and this is just another venue. I want to thank MMTV, and also I want to thank Andrew and Dale for taking your time. I know you're off today, both of you, to come down and do this. So again, people out there, this is Melrose, what do we call it? Behind the Badge, Melrose edition. And follow us on social media. We thank you for your time.